What's going on, everybody? So now that we know how to add in Microsoft Excel, right, a simple function or math problem, and we saved our data sheet as animals onto our desktop, as you can see here, animals.csv and animals.xlsx, right? And again, the Excel workbook format .xlsx, this is going to be the file that you want to work with when you are trying to save Excel spreadsheets that have plots, images, whatever you have in them, okay? A CSV file is only if you're dealing strictly with numbers, okay? So now that we understand that, I'm going to close this because we already have this on our desktop, so we know where it is. And I'm going to expand the RStudio screen, okay? And now let's go over what this screen is and how we're going to navigate it, okay? And so before we do that, I'm going to need you to, well, one, pause the video if you need to, but go up here and click on the piece of paper with the plus sign, right? Get that drop-down menu, hit RScript, the first one that comes up, and now on your screen, you're going to see 4 panes, right? And so now let's go through each of these windows so you can kind of get an idea of what we're doing. This top left window that you just opened, this is called an R script, okay? And you can think of this as sort of like a Microsoft Word document, but for computer code, okay? And so whatever you work on up here, we can even save it, right? And I highly suggest you make it a habit of saving as you go. So we're going to hit the floppy disk, right? And again, we're going to remember the name of what we give it. And all scripts are going to have the extension .r because you're using RStudio. And we're going to know where we're saving this, all right? So you can find it. And we're going to put this again on our desktop, okay? And so for this one, I'm just going to call this tutorial 1. Okay, so I'm going to hit save. And now our document is going to be saved on our desktop. So just to see where it is, let's see where this thing is. Okay, right here, tutorial1.r. Okay, all of your scripts that you work on in RStudio are going to have the .R extension. And so that's what we have now. Okay, and anytime you change it, just hit the floppy disk to save as you go so you don't lose progress of any work. All right, so this is your R script, and this is where we're going to be working primarily from because we can save it. So then that means we can store it in our Google Drive, send it to our instructor, whatever you need to do. Okay, and any line of code that you run up here is going to print out in your command window, your bottom left window. Your command window is able to run single lines of code, but you're not going to be able to save the progress or save the entire log of all of your commands, okay? So for example, get WD, right? This is an example of a function or a command that stands for get the working directory, okay? And working directory, if you remember, is just the file that you're located in, right? And so when you run get WD, if you're trying to run a single line from your R script, right? If you're on a Mac, you're going to do Command Enter. If you're on a PC, do Control Enter. So I'm going to do Command Enter. And I ran get WD. Notice how it printed down in my command window, and it returned for me the file path, right? So this is just an index, meaning this is the first item I'm going to return to you, and it returned for us a file path. And a file path is just a way to be able to tell what file the RStudio program is currently located in. And you read a file path from left to right, okay? And so within your laptop or my laptop, I'm inside of the largest folder called users. Within users, right, I'm inside a smaller folder called Clarence Lay. And inside of Clarence Lay, I'm inside a smaller folder called desktop, okay? And the last file on the right-hand side is your current location. And so get WD is good for checking where you are, okay? Another command that you can use is set WD. This stands for set my working directory or change my location here. And what you can do is, let's say instead of being on the desktop, I want to move to documents, okay? So what you do is, I always run get wd first so that it already gives me a path. This could be because I don't want to do all this typing. As long as you're working inside of RStudio, copy and pasting should be fine. I do not recommend copy and pasting from outside of RStudio in, okay? Because errors can come up for a number of reasons. So this file path is what we're going to use as what we call the input into setwd. An input is basically just the path that you feed your setwd function, and it's going to set your new path to, and you can change this to documents, okay? And so instead of running it from my R script, I am going to run this line from the command prompt just to show you that you can actually use the command prompt to run a single line, right, of code. So I'm going to copy this, and we're still within the RStudio program, so it's fine. And I'm going to, down here, when you're running a command in your command prompt, you don't have to hold anything down, you just hit enter. So I'm going to hit enter, okay? Nothing else popped up after that, and that's a good sign. If you get red text afterwards, read it. If it says a warning message, generally you're okay. If it says error message, know that the command that you just ran did not register, and you're going to have to read that error message, and it's going to tell you what's wrong, okay, or point you in that direction. So now that I changed or set a new file or working directory to my documents, let's just check to see if it really did that. And how we're going to do that is rerun getwd, okay? And when we're running a command from our R script, again, command enter or control enter, I'm going to hover my cursor on line 1 and do that. So now you see that we are in documents, okay? Notice what I did there. Instead of running another single getwd command in my command prompt, I went back up to my R script and I was able to rerun line 1 without retyping it, okay? These are the little things, conveniences that you get from working in your R script, okay? And so that's kind of the interplay between your script and your command prompt. Now let's move over here, okay? Pretty cool, right? We're gonna move over here. The top right is your environment, okay? When you're using variables, when you are initializing variables and giving them values, right? Sort of like x is equal to 2, okay? If I give the variable x the value of 2, this is the same thing as writing down on a piece of paper x is equal to 2, because in RStudio, instead of an equal sign, you use an arrow, all right? So if I command enter or control enter line 4, notice that it prints down in my command prompt so I can see what it did. We're good, I didn't get a message. And now when you look in your environment, you see that you can keep track of your variable and the value that it corresponds to, right? Same thing if I initialize a variable called y is equal to 3, and I command or control enter that, right? The command registers in my command window, and it also saves my environment. So as you're going, this is going to get longer, and you can keep track of what you are working with, okay? Very convenient, very good skill to have, all right? So down here on the bottom right, you don't have any nice plots yet, but when you start making plots and visuals, you'll see them up here, or sorry, down here. And once you have one, you can actually hit export. You can save it as an image file or a PDF onto your computer. Note that any file or any image, sorry, that you export is going to save onto whatever directory you're currently in. So, right, so if you set your working directory to documents and you export an image, it's going to export or save that in your documents folder. If you are set to your desktop, it is going to save that image on your desktop. Okay, so very simple. And so let's now use our command prompt and our R script in order to read in our animals data set and do some simple math. Okay, so one thing that you want to know is that some commands or functions, right? That's how we're going to use RStudio to do some simple coding. Some of those commands are going to be stored in packages that you have to first install before you can use them. And the way that you're going to install packages to use is 2 lines. So the first one is install.packages, and you see it comes up automatically, right? And you can click on it if you don't want to type it out. The first line is install.packages. Know that a function is always going to have a set of parentheses right after it, okay? Some functions like getWD do not need an input, right? Input is just stuff that goes inside of those parentheses. And most functions like setWD and install.packages, you're going to need some type of input, okay? So whether it's a file path, or in this case, the name of the package that we want, okay? In this case, install.packages, inside of there you want double quotes. Inside of those double quotes, you're going to put the name of the package that you want. So I'm going to type in readxl, right? I'm going to command or control enter on this one, and you're going to see that it printed down here. And notice that the sideways hat has not appeared yet. Now it has. Whenever this sideways hat is not there yet, that means your code is still running, okay? Now that it's good, I'm going to run the second line, which is library. The difference is inside of the library input, you do not need any quotations. So again, you're just going to put the name of the package one more time, control or command enter, okay? Just like this is just a warning message. So we're generally fine. And this just says that this package, readxl, was built under this R version, okay? So that's not gonna kill the mood of our party, right? And so we're good to go. So now that we have our package, now we can use the function that we need, which is read_xl, okay? And so let's do that. And also, another tip or requirement, sorry, is that when you're trying to import a file from your computer, right, in our case, from our desktop, onto RStudio, the working directory of RStudio needs to match the directory or location of your data set. So in this case, we need to set our working directory back to the desktop. I'm going to command enter there, and we're good. And if you want to check again, check getWD, right? Rerun that. So we're good. So now that we have this, we can use our command. So when you're importing a file, you want to give that file a name, and the name can be as short or as long as you'd like. Generally, you want the shortest, most concise name that you can for ease of coding. So in this case, I'm going to call it anim, okay? Short for animals. And again, we're going to set this equal to, in RStudio we use an arrow. And now we're going to use the command, right? So read_xl. Notice that RStudio is going to autofill, or basically automatically pop up the options that you have, as long as you're coding on the right track, right? Your letters are correct. So you can click on read_xl because that's what we need. Inside of here, we're going to do double quotes, and you need to spell the file that you are importing exactly how you see it, okay? So case, like uppercase, lowercase, all that stuff. So we're going to do animals.xlsx. And once we run this, before I run that, all this is saying is read my Excel file, right? And you're telling it which file to read, which is this one. And you're saying save it as the variable anim, okay? So I'm going to hover my cursor on line 10. I'm going to Command Enter. This message seems like it's totally fine. And so notice I'm going to maximize this window now. So we successfully imported it up here, right, under data. So anim is now a data frame. I'm going to move my picture. And here you can look at it. Either you can click on this chart right here, right, which is going to bring up your data frame on the top left window, okay? Your script is still over here, so click on it if you want to go back and forth. But now, look, this is our data that we created and worked on in Excel. These are our animals in each of our cities, and this was the total that we calculated, right, using the Excel functions. So now we can go back to our script. Whenever the script is red and it has an asterisk, that means that you changed it since the last time that you saved. So make it a habit to click that as you go, okay? So you can keep all your work. And if you don't want to click on this picture in order to look at your data sheet, you can use this function or command, view with a capital V, right? That's your function. Your input is just the name of your variable, right? Or your data frame. So anim, I can Command Enter view anim, right? And notice that before this, even when I clicked on this button, right, that button ran the same command. Okay, so you can either do this by clicking or you can do it by this command. And so now that we have this, let's say that I want to add, right, a column to this data frame called minus, right? So instead of total, we're going to do minus. And just to keep it interesting, we want to calculate the difference between the number of dogs and cats, okay? And so I know some of these are going to come up negative, but that's fine. This example is just to look at how we're going to perform adding, subtracting, normal math within the RStudio environment. Okay, so that's the scope of what we're doing. And so let's do it. So the way that we added a new column in Excel was that we just typed in manually the name of the new column. Okay, in RStudio, it's a little bit different. We need to use the $sign, and I'm going to write the general form here. And again, anytime I start off a line with an asterisk or a hashtag, this just becomes a comment, okay? So if you were to run this entire script, line 13 will just reprint in your command prompt, but the program will not read this as computer code. It'll just read it as you labeling as you go, okay? So use this wherever you'd like. And so for my first comment, I guess, the general way to identify a variable from a data frame is the following. Okay, you're going to give the name of your data frame, $sign, the name of the variable, really can't spell, data frame, $sign, variable. Okay, know this, remember this, and learn this. Okay, so we said that we want to create a new column in anim called minus. And so the same way that you use the $sign to access or point to cats, point to dogs, point to fish, that's the same way you're going to create a new column. Okay, so you're going to give the name of the data frame, in this case anim, $sign. You're saying create for me, right? And these column names come up. You're adding a new one. So you're saying in the data frame anim, create for me a new column called minus, right? And to that column, I want you to assign the values of, we said the number of dogs minus the number of cats, right? So we need to point to dogs minus, and then we need to point to the values in cats, right? Because we're subtracting 39 by 10, 29 by 15, 32 by 14, and so on. And so we're going to do inside of our data frame anim, access the numbers in the dogs column and subtract that, right, by, with an enum, the numbers in cats. Okay? And when you run this command enter here, notice that line 16 prints into your command prompt, which means you're fine, you did it. And also, now you're gonna see if you do the view command of enum, command prompt this, you're gonna see that this entire data sheet got updated and you added this column in here, right? Called minus, it's the number of dogs, 39, minus number of cats, 10, that gave you 29, right? And 29 minus 15 is 14, and so on for the rest of them. And so this is how you take an Excel sheet, right? Save it, import it into RStudio, making sure that your working directory for the file and your RStudio program are the same. And then using the data frame $ variable notation in order to create a new column and set that equal to the operation using currently existing columns. Okay, and so if you understood that, good job. If you need a little more time, totally fine. It took me a second to learn this as well. Okay, so if you have any questions, comments, please feel free to leave them below. I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Okay, have a nice day, everyone.